through my career, I've had, successes and I've had, failures. And I found that it's interesting how everybody talks about peaks and valleys in real estate. And I'm a big believer in, setting goals and dreams and achieving those. And what I found though, it was interesting is that when I would hit my goal and I owned the house, I had bought the car, I had the children, I built the family, we bought this, whatever it is that we created that we wanted to have in our life based on the dreams that we set, I achieved those things. And when I thought, oh my God, if I could ever just get there, everything would be better. Then I'd get there and I'd ask myself, this is it. And that was a dangerous place to be.
מעטים מדברים על מה קורה אחרי הצלחה, אחרי שהמטרה הושגה, כי שם למעשה מתחיל המשחק האמיתי. אז נעים לי מאוד, אני נטשה גלוזמן-חנסב, מרימקס ישראל, ובפודקאסט אוויר פסגות אני מארחת אנשים שבחרו לבנות הצלחה שמחזיקה שנים. זהו פודקאסט על מנטליות, על משמעת והבחירה להישאר שם בטופ. אם הגעתם רחוק בעסק, בקריירה ובחיים שלכם, והשאלה שלכם היא איך לא לרדת, אתם לגמרי במקום הנכון. הנה, אנחנו מתחילים. That was my dream to invite you to my podcast.
Well, thank you. I'm honored to be here, and as you know, anything I can do for you guys. That's you've heard that come out of my mouth many times.
Yes, you've been a dear friend of us for many years.
Yes,
actually, do you remember when we first met?
I do. Do you remember? I remember.
Oh my God, you have changed how I approach training on international stages in a heartbeat.
It was in Amsterdam.
Correct. Oh my God, I can't believe you remember that.
And it was in a green room.
Yes.
And we were both getting ready to take the stage.
Uh-huh. Except it was my first time ever speaking outside of Israel.
And somebody, out of the two of us, somebody was somewhat nervous. And I don't know who it was. No, I do remember that.
I was so focused on my notes. I remember as if it was yesterday. And then, I didn't know who you were. And you were so nice. You said, you got this. You can leave your notes aside and you'll be great. I'm like, who is this guy? He's right. And that's it. And since that, just for you to know, I never take my notes with me. I take a deep breath and I have fun, and that's it.
And that's really what it is, because, when we talked about it that day, it's, your audience, the people that came to see you, they came to see you for you. They didn't come to see you so you can impress them with your notes. They're not interested in being attracted with that. They're interested in you, in you being authentic and truly trying to inspire them to do something that improves their business, their life, whatever it may be. And it's actually a lesson that I learned early on. It was, I think I remember telling you this, that, so I'm very close. Richard Robbins is a very good personal friend of mine. I know has done a lot of work there in Rimaks of Israel as well. And he had told me earlier on, that he says, ניית'en, I had learned this lesson from Jim Rohn. Jim Rohn, famous speaker, and I said, he said, ניית'en, one day I came off stage and we were doing some event, I guess in Toronto or something. And Jim Rohn was there, and he went to go speak to Jim Rohn, asking the best piece of advice Jim Rohn could give Richard Robbins. And Jim says to Richard, he says, well, have you ever gotten off stage and your hands felt cold? Richard's like, well, yeah. And he goes, but have you ever gone off stage and your hands feel warm and you're flushed, your face is flushed and you just feel warm coming off stage? And Richard's like, I do. He goes, that's the difference of inspiring your audience compared to impressing your audience. When you inspire your audience, it's emotional. You've got a connection. That's where you feel the warmth. But when you're trying to impress the audience, well, that's when you're cold. You're not connecting with the audience. And I never forgot that. And one of the things I shared it with you guys, with you when we were in the green room, is that if you can always come from a place of trying to inspire, that's authentic, rather than trying to come from a place of impressing. And he told me that, I don't know, it was 2011, 2012, something around that time frame. It was early in my career when it came to public speaking and what have you. And I remember my first big event that I had was 2013. Somebody had heard me do, like, I was at an R4 conference, and somebody was asking me questions in the audience. Like, I was just a guy standing in the chair. And after they heard some responses I made, whatever that was, a guy came up to me and says, "Hey, Nate, I'd like you to be our keynote speaker at a 2-day event." I said, "Well, I'm not a speaker." He's like, "I know." He goes, "But could you do that?" I'm like, "Okay. I mean, I don't know what I'm going to do." And I remember I didn't know how to put PowerPoints together. I didn't know how to put a presentation together. I knew nothing. I had one of the agents on my team do the PowerPoint for me. Like, I spent weeks on this trying to master this PowerPoint, to where the day before I left to go on this speaking, engagement, I didn't know what I was going to say. I had these beautiful slides, but I didn't know what I was going to say. I remember laying in bed with my wife that night, and she looks at me and she goes, "ניית'en, are you ready for the talk?" I said, "Honey, I don't know. Like, I got this PowerPoint, but I don't have any clue what I'm going to say." And I said, "Do you mind if I just lay here and then I just can go through the slides with you?" So I go through the slides. I'm on this 10th slide, and she looks at me and she goes, "What is your problem?" And I said, "What? Is this wrong?" She goes, "ניית'en, that guy that saw you in the audience, he hired you for you and what you had to say when you did not have slides. I'm hearing you talk through 10 slides right now, and you're just so-called winging it. You're just having a conversation. They hired you for who you are and what impact you've already made. This is just an added bonus. So be authentic." And I put the computer down. I went to the speaking engagement, and I never had notes. I had my slides, but I was just having a conversation, being authentic, trying to inspire. So it's a lesson I learned. It's been invaluable. If I'm speaking to one person, or if I'm be speaking to 10,000 people, it doesn't matter.
I mean, your heart is always here, and it's something that everybody feels. And it really, I mean, you really touched me when I was so stressful, and in a minute, I gained a friend. That was, to me, a gift, a very big gift. So actually, we've been speaking now, and I'm thinking maybe not everybody know who you are, who's ניית'en Dart is, maybe the new agent in רימקס Israel, or the new broker. So maybe could you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Other than being a friend of Natasha's, which really, what else does it matter? I mean,
Stop.
Nothing else matters there. I'm ניית'en Dart. I'm with ریمکس. To give you some context, I'm a second-generation ریمکس agent and former broker owner as well. My dad brought ریمکس actually to Maryland, where I'm at. I'm in Maryland, just outside of Washington, D.C. in the U.S. And my dad brought ریمکس to Maryland back in the mid-'80s. And so he came from a position where he was working in somewhat corporate America. And he was commuting into DC, an hour and a half commute every day, and got tired of doing that, and decided that he didn't want to do that every day. He's like, "Hey, I just bought this house with this one agent," and he said, it's not the nicest thing. He says, "If this agent can sell real estate, anybody can sell real estate. So I'm going to give it a try." So my dad, he quit his job, and he had 3 boys. I'm the oldest of 3 sons, and he quit his job and started selling real estate in 85 timeframe. And he had no other choice other than to be successful. His first year, he was rookie of the year, his first year in real estate. And he was in not at ریمکس at the time, but ریمکس had came to him and said, "Hey, Craig, rookie of the year, maybe you might want to bring ریمکس here." So he did. And that was in 86. He owned the franchise till about 2007, when I then took over the franchise, which is a fun time in the U.S. to take over a franchise in 2007 during the housing crisis era.
How old were you?
I was at that time, well, no, I'm sorry, it's 2008. So I had just turned 30. Yeah, it was when I took over the franchise. But prior to that, I'd always known I was going to be selling real estate. It's all I ever wanted to do since I was since I was 10, 11 years old, I was going to Remax conferences with my parents. I was
Whoa.
in Vegas. I was in the Orlando conferences. I would always be there at the booths, handing out different, promotional, materials for the referral networking and what have you. I had the pleasure of going and hearing the great speakers that we all know, the Howard Brittons, the Dave Knoxes, the Mike Ferries. Now you got Tom. And so I've seen, obviously as this continued to grow. And as a kid, I said, well, that's what I want to do. I was inspired by what my dad did, the sacrifices he made, the commitment he made, that obviously made an impact on me. So I was 17 before my senior year in high school, taking my real estate classes. You can't take your test until you're 18. So when I was 18, I took my test, passed my test. And my dad says, well, Nate, that's all great, but you're not selling real estate till you graduate college. So I did. I graduated in 01. And then immediately after I graduated, I've been selling real estate. And I
So
haven't
unlike other kids who hear bedtime stories about fairies and dragons, you practically heard stories about negotiation, about marketing. You were born with a balloon, we can say.
talk about bedtime stories. As you guys know, in real estate, this is not a 9 to 5 job, nor do we have weekends off, and neither did my
Right.
dad. And I would wait. I don't know what my deal was. I would wait for my dad to get home, and he had an office at home as well. And I would sit and do my homework or sit in my dad's office with him and just listen to him on the phone. I don't know why. I enjoyed it. And I took a lot in. And from that's really kind of helped. Plus, he always would come home late, so we didn't have dinner always together, which you guys, I'm sure, could appreciate. But there was a restaurant that would stay open late. And so I would wait up so he could take me out to this restaurant because it was a good restaurant. And
And you get to stay up late.
yeah, and it would be like 9 o'clock, and we're having ribs and French fries or whatever it was that we would have at this particular place. And he would just talk. He would talk about his day, and I love that. And I think that kind of helped the process get started. So yeah, my bedtime stories were over a late night dinner with my dad, just debriefing and just really kind of letting his day go. Got to take a lot
Talking
of that
about quality time, huh? Something
well,
we all need to know how to do.
yeah, I mean, it's, and maybe not all kids think that's quality time, but I don't know that, well, I don't know. I would say my kids kind of enjoy that too, but anyhow, it's all different.
May I ask if
Yeah.
you felt that you really had a choice, a career choice? Because I'll share, I grew up in a family of musicians. I'm the black sheep in my family. Everybody are playing something. My brother is a violinist. And I play the clarinet too. My parents both taught me in high school. My dad taught me clarinet. It was madhouse. I mean, you live with your parents, their hobbies, their profession. And at a certain point, I decided that it's not right for me. It's not who I am. I did really appreciate how they were involved in their students' life. And I really liked how they impacted their lives. Actually, funny story, my mom just got a phone call from her ex-student who's 30, and he named his firstborn daughter with her name. So that's amazing. Did you really feel that you have a choice?
Yeah, no, my parents, that's why they made me go to college. They said, no, we're not going to pigeonhole into real estate. And I appreciated that. So, when I went to college, I said, okay, well, the only reason I went to the schools that I picked were because they offered a real estate degree. Now that's
okay.
But that's not what I ended up doing. I went to Penn State because they had a real estate degree. At the end of the day, all they're going to do is give me a real estate license in Pennsylvania, which I had no interest in using. So then I transferred to University of Maryland, where they did not have a real estate degree. But I was going to say, well, let me see what might be different. So I considered government and politics, which didn't want to do that because can't get anything done with that. So then I looked at business. I looked at communications. I ended up graduating with interpersonal communications, which I'm glad I did. It wasn't necessarily about the public speaking as much as understanding the psychology of communication and all that. And I didn't know how and where that was going to help me in the future, but that's what I ended up doing when it came to my schooling. But I absolutely had a choice. Absolutely had a choice. And it's interesting, out of the 3 boys, as I said, I'm the oldest of 3 boys. We all took completely different paths. Nobody was, required to do real estate. I mean, it was an option, but it was never something that was pushed upon any of them.
It was a really natural connection for you.
It was.
Do you
for
remember? Oh, I'm sorry.
No.
Do you remember maybe a funny story where when you were just a rookie with your father, maybe with a client, maybe with a customer, something that you take on with you and it always makes you laugh?
What's the age rating on this podcast here?
Whoa, don't worry, we're in the safe zone.
So, it was funny. When I started, I was 22. I had just got out of college. I was 22, and it was 2000, 2001, 2002. And at the time, you didn't have the internet to advertise listings. That wasn't there, right? You weren't emailing listings to clients and all that kind of stuff. Everything was in a real estate magazine. And with these real estate magazines, it was kind of funny. The joke was it was almost like a dating magazine more than it was a real estate magazine. And my dad would always tell me, he goes, Nate, you got to be careful, because I was getting phone calls to go show houses, but they weren't really looking for houses. And so he said, Nathan, you got to be careful, because you got to remember that you're selling houses. You're not buying houses. So you got to make sure you do that. And there's one lady that had called in the office, and she's like, oh yeah, I got to sell my house and I got to go buy. And my dad was pre-qualifying her or whatever on the phone. And she was like almost kind of hitting on him a bit. And he kept saying, well, by the way, I've got at the time, 23-year-old son. She goes, ooh, whatever. So he then, as a joke, forwards me this person and says, Nathan, you got to go out and show her houses. So I call her to qualify her and see what she wants to look for, not in a date, but in like a house. And we identify, 5, 6 different houses to go take a look at. I go pick her up, and she comes out dressed to the nine, like she's ready to go. This is a date for her. We're not looking at houses. And every house that we go to, she wanted to bring it back into the context of what she'd like to do in that house with me. And I left that saying, okay, we got to focus on, we're looking at selling a house here. I'm not buying a house. We're not getting into this. We're going to keep this thing focused. And I remember dropping her off thinking, okay, I got out of this thing. I'm safe. I'm good. And she says, well, your dad asked me to do some decluttering in the house. Would you mind coming in and seeing that I did everything that I was supposed to do? And I'm thinking, oh, I know where this is going. This is a tough spot.
I'm sending pops.
Yeah, no. So, but I'm a 23-year-old, like trying to figure this thing out. So yes, I'm saying yes to everything. And so I go in the house, she's giving me a tour, and I'm like, no, everything looks good. She goes, hey, can you come upstairs? I want to show you upstairs. And I said, well, I got to get going. Like the whole time I'm like, this is, and she goes, well, no, I got this rug that I can't carry up. Can you carry this rug up? Your dad told me I had to, the hardwood floors, I rolled up this rug, but I just can't carry it, and I got to bring it upstairs. Okay. I'll go carry this thing upstairs. Well, I carried it upstairs. She goes, well, it goes in my bedroom. I'm thinking, I have got to get out of this house. Like, this is enough's enough. And she's like, yeah, so we're just going to I'm going to hide it under the bed. But before I do, I got to pull this picture out of the bed. Your dad told me I had to take it off the wall. I'm thinking, okay. So I pull the picture out, and it's this massive picture that she apparently had right over her bed. And it was a full-size naked photo of her. And she says, so what do you think of the photo? Your dad thought I should take it down. It wasn't appropriate for showings. What do you think? I'm like, oh God. And then all of a sudden I hear this bang, 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 bang on the front door. And she's like, oh my goodness. And I said, what? Like, what am I doing? She goes down the stairs to find that her ex-boyfriend or boyfriend or whatever is at her front door. And I'm like, I'm not having any part of this thing. I go downstairs to find out I don't know if you guys follow American football, but the former Washington Redskins, now Washington Commanders, whatever. He was a lineman for the Washington Redskins, an NFL football team. And I'm like walking out the door, and saying, hey, just here.
That's your problem, man.
I'll let you take on this. So I remember calling my dad after leaving that house saying, Dad, what did you get me into? And he still today cannot stop laughing about this and tells a story everything. Oh, you wouldn't believe what I did today. So that's one of the stories.
Oh, I can only imagine the jokes
Not
and
all,
conversation you had around the table. My question is, were you at that time already married or not?
no, absolutely not. No, I don't think, no. I was not. I was not
Wow,
married.
that's crazy. That's really, really good. So you worked with your dad for how many years?
So my dad and I worked together from till about 2007. Around 2007, it's just we started to see more short sales and foreclosures come into the marketplace. And he's just like, look, there's nothing short about these short sales, so I'm out. Nate, you can take on this new world of real estate. And he had been working since 20 plus years at this point. He had built up his portfolio as far as rental properties, investment properties, so he had the ability to retire. And it was around that same time, when my dad and I worked together, it was just my dad and I. We didn't have assistants, we didn't have staff. He was the broker, had 300 agents or so, and had some partners there and been doing that, but he never had an assistant. The only assistant that ever lasted with my dad was me. My dad was a tough guy to work with. If you know color profile for personalities or disc profiling, he was your high green or your high D personality. So there wasn't a lot of hand holding in when I was learning with my dad, but which made it difficult for him to hire anybody, obviously. So it was just my dad and I, and we would do about 120 or so transactions a year just between the two of us. And
Amazing.
It was around 06 when Danielle and I, my wife and I, got married. We both got really clear to say, we don't want to live a life where it's 14 hours a day, 7 days a week. We truly want to be in a position to build a business that supports the life that we want to live. And in doing that, it's going to come with building a team. So that was kind of the catalyst of when all that started. And honestly, that's when I was introduced to Richard Robbins. I was at an R4 conference and he had spoke in the Coaching Hall of Fame. And it was in the Coaching Hall of Fame at the time, it was Brian Buffini, Richard Robbins, and Howard Britton.
Amazing.
And my dad was a Howard Britton star. So for people that have been in the business a long time, Howard Britton was. Are you familiar with Howard Britton at all?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I know Bernard definitely is familiar with Howard.
Course.
He was amazing. He of course has passed away, but he had created such a network of the top agents in the world, and they would run these series called Star Power, and it would be these Star Power universities, and if you were proven to be successful or whatever, Howard would personally interview their so-called stars, and my dad was a star. So I had grown up listening to this cassette tapes, which maybe some of your listeners may not have any clue what a cassette tape is, but listening to these cassette tapes all the time with my dad. And so I knew that I liked that. But what I knew is that in order for me to build something bigger or different than what my dad has created, I saw the importance of coaching. And I didn't necessarily need to know how to learn how to do the scripts and, that kind of stuff. I got that. Like I can sell real estate. That wasn't a problem. But where I found I was weak is that I didn't understand how to truly build a business, because I was a great salesperson, but to be a great salesperson does not make you a great business person. So when I met Rich, his messaging was around how to build a business. And at the time, and I, nothing against some of the coaches in the marketplace, it's rare to find a coach that's truly focused on the business aspect of it rather than all the other bells and whistles.
Yeah, personal, family. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's what attracted me to work with RI and Rich. And that's when I really started building a business that supports the life that I want to live and building that team. But the catalyst was a conversation I had with my wife, Danielle, because prior to me meeting Danielle, I was working these crazy hours, which I know some of our viewers can certainly appreciate, where you're not having enough time. You may be making a lot of money, which is great, but you're not having the ability to share it with anybody. And you continue to hit these plateaus, and you're just like, well, this is great, but at the end of the day, what's happening with my family? What does that look like? So to me, it had to be a bigger picture, and the only way that I could continue the level of growth that I wanted to achieve was to not do it by myself anymore, and to grow that team.
That's amazing, because a lot of our broker owners and even agents who want to multiply themselves, And you actually met one of them recently. Roy, if you're listening, it's you. But the thing is, I mean, it's a huge transition to a person to make. It's not only the to make more money and close more deals, but first of all is how do I, it's not lose control, but how do I navigate and I trust others to do stuff instead of me, because I need to release this thinking in my head that I might be the best version to do this job, but there are other people who can do it better. And if I want more time, I need to train, I need to trust them. And it's a huge transition that you made when you just mentioned that you didn't see your father doing that.
Right. Yeah, it is not an overnight transition. So for anybody that says, oh, I'm just going to start a team, this is easy. It is not. It is not. I have made through my career a fair amount of mistakes in continuing to grow my team. And it's through those mistakes that I said, okay, I got to learn from this to be able to take it to the next level. And, you know, I made the mistake of saying, oh yeah, I'm better than everybody else. I can do it. Nobody else can do it better than I can. You know, I can't afford a qualified assistant, so I'm going to hire somebody part-time that doesn't really know what they're doing just so I can say I have an assistant. I'm going to hire a bunch of random agents, say that they're on my team, and yet they're not productive and I'm not paying. Yeah, I've made that mistake. And those mistakes can be very expensive, not only financially, but also with your time. So if I could tell anybody anything of value right now, say, if you wanted to start a team, you absolutely should. What you find is that the threshold that we've studied, when you're ready to build a team or at least hire your first assistant, once you start doing, say, 30 to 35 plus transactions a year, that's the time you want to start thinking about, okay, now I need to hire my first assistant. That's where you start. Most people, what I found is that the agents, they say, well, I'm going to build a team. They don't start with hiring an assistant. They start with hiring an agent.
Agent.
Which I got to be honest is completely irresponsible of you, okay? Because that agent is coming to you because they lack the ability to generate leads on a consistent basis and have systems and structure. Now think about it. For you as an individual agent, your systems, your structure is in your head. It's not in a system. It's not in a CRM. It's not in a database. You don't have that. What you have is what you do, and you do it very well, which has made you this successful. But you've got 200 things on every transaction that are buzzing around through your head constantly. And now you've got this new agent that's going to be trying to figure out what's going on in your head. And
nobody can do that. Nobody.
It's never going to translate. So what you do is you hire your first person on your team as an assistant. Okay, that person, you want to say, okay, how can this person download all the stuff that's going on in my head into a system? Okay, because right now you're a people-dependent business. You're a person-dependent business.
Yeah.
Once you can translate this into something else, you're translating into a system-dependent business.
Did you really invest the time into writing and, you know, translating from your head, your thoughts, your know-how into, let's say, manual books that you can then duplicate and get new people into the business and then they will know what to do? Did you really write it down?
Yeah. Now I didn't write it down. The person that I hired wrote it down. And that same person continues to write it down as we continue to grow. Because the business that I had in 2006, 2007, when I first started growing my team, or I guess it was 2008 is when I first started growing the team. That business is not the same business I have today. So it continues to evolve. But what I had to do, the only way I could do it. So if you're looking at, do you guys use disc personality or color profile?
We're using disc.
So if you're using disc, so I'm a DI, right? So I can understand systems. I'm not going to put them together, right?
Yeah.
So I don't have the patience to do that. So I had to hire for my first assistant. They had to be a high C. Somebody that was detail oriented, somebody that was system based, somebody that understood that. So that person sat next to me for everything I did. And I, like probably a lot of you, I didn't have a CRM at that time. You know, my dad and his idea of CRMs were still in the box under his desk. They never actually got It's not to say you guys would ever do that ever. But anyhow, so I didn't have that.
There are stories from Bernard who told us that he used this with little cards.
Yeah, it happens. Bernard and my dad probably have the same CRM still under their desk.
Yeah.
But what we did is I got cued in with a company called Salesforce, which I'm sure you're familiar with Salesforce.
Yeah.
But my assistant at the time said, okay, let's get rid of all those pieces of paper that you have spread all over your desk. And let's put all those contacts into the CRM so that we can start building systems within the context of your contacts. So that's how we started building it out. We started looking at every workflow you had, whether it be a pre-listing campaign, a post-listing appointment campaign, a going live campaign, a post-sale campaign, all the campaigns that we could launch where there was all system dependent. Now, how that happened is we wanted to break down every single workflow that we go through in our heads as agents. And think about it this way. You've got, let's call it 200 tasks that occur with any transaction you have, whether it be working with a buyer or working with a seller. The goal for you as the team leader is, how do I get from 200 tasks buzzing around in my head to 5?
Mm-hmm.
So there's 195 tasks, which I don't want you to worry about anymore. I want those 195 tasks to be pushed off to maybe your assistant, to systems, to whatever, so you can focus on the top 5 things that you need to focus on, because that's generating money for you. Yep. So that's what we built. We said, okay, I want to take all this out of my head so I don't have to focus on anymore, and then give it to the system. Once you got that system in place and you got these workflows, that's the structure that agents need. They need it, because the reason they're not successful is because of the lack of structure. We'll talk about that later if we have time, but it's the lack of structure that truly gives you freedom.
Yeah, I'll tell you a really funny story, that one of our broker owners, many years ago, he finally understood that he needs an assistant to his office. So he hired one, and it didn't work out. And then he hired another one, and it didn't work out. He ended up hiring 11 assistants. And then he figured out that he said, okay, so I got her in, and I don't know what she needs to do. I don't know what to tell her. She has no assignments. And only then, first of all, he found the right person. But then he, as you say, he sat down, and together with her, she helped him a lot to take all the crazy ideas and assignments into a workflow that now she's capable of running. I mean, she's managing him. And I remember that on COVID, you were doing so many Zooms for רימקס Europe, and we all also participated in it. You shared with us your workflows, and we translated them in Hebrew. And our agents, their minds were blown away, because they finally understood that there are things that can make them days more simple and give them more time to be with their customers, with sellers, with buyers, instead of doing all the work behind the scene. And it's worth the money to hire someone in order to do more and have actually more time with their family and whatever goals you have.
Absolutely, it is. And it's funny that this particular broker, I'm not giving you a hard time if you're listening, but the reason the 11 people didn't work out wasn't because of them, probably. It was probably because of you. And what it was, it's because what you have to do in order for these people to be successful is you have to give them clarity. Like, you got to set proper expectations of what the role is. But once you present proper expectations of what the role is, you now have to let go, and you have to empower them to live up to the capacity that they were hired for. Because if you don't, and if you micromanage and you don't give them clarity, they're set up to fail. So you gotta, this is where all this processing comes into play. So because it's the structure is everything. It's with that structure, then you can start bringing on more people.
All right.
And that's what I did. I had the initial assistant that helped me build out the system. Then we brought on our first buyer's agent. We got that first buyer's agent doing quite well. They were doing 20 plus transactions or what have you a year, generating more and more business, because now I could focus on generating the business rather than constantly being in the trenches, right? Well, then this person was at capacity. So we said, okay, now we need our next hire. So then we hired the next person, because where I wanted to be, here's the 200 tasks, here's 195 goes off to this person.
Yeah, so I can duplicate yourself.
Yeah. And then that one person was at capacity. So I got to figure out what the best area of excellence is for that person. Then I said, okay, well, here's the next one that we got to find the next area of excellence here. And we've continued to grow for there. Like right now, I've got 6 people on staff. where everybody operates within their own area of excellence. And it allows me now to go from my top 5, which is actually 3, working on my top 2. And so I want the agents or the people on my team to be operating the same mentality, that I want them in their area of focus without the distractions of everything else.
Amazing, because above all things that I hear from you, it's not only the, professionalism that you bring into the business, but also you see the person in front of you and you help them, or even maybe you're the one who's doing that. You're matching the tasks and the goal to the area of excellence, you called it, of that person, and you help him grow in his area.
Well, it's been nice that we the team that we've got, my initial management team, we've been together for quite some time. And, for every couple of years, we just need to refreshing things up, where I want to understand what area of their job, gives them energy, and what area of their job sucks the life out of them that they absolutely hate. Because if I've got somebody doing something that they hate, then they're probably not very good at it either. I want to make sure that I can realign that somewhere else. So we got it dialed in pretty tight right now. With everybody on my management team is dialed in where they're focused on the areas that give them energy rather than sucking the life out of them.
That's amazing.
And but in order to do that, you also have to empower them. Like, I know what everybody's doing generally, but I trust them entirely. Like, I don't have to micromanage. And the reason I know what's going on, when I trust them entirely. So if even if I didn't have this, I'd probably be okay. But still, everything's in our CRM. So every time somebody does something, reaches out to a client, closes a task, sends orders, pictures, appraisals, or whatever, I can see everything within my CRM. So when I call, or I have a seller that calls me or whatever, I know exactly what's going on without me actually having to do it. So it's a powerful place to be. Now, there's still accountability there, which has to be. There's still planning and stuff like that. But we're operating efficiently because of it, because we're empowering them. I'm not micromanaging. You get me in a place to micromanage, I'm doing the wrong thing. So
yeah. Plus, I can imagine that execution is a key, let's say, value for your team, because if I'm not delivering, then I might be nice, I might have nice eyes, but I don't have a professional place.
That's right. And that not only goes for the management team, but it also goes for the agents, right?
Yeah.
And for the agents, the execution is everything, right? If you don't execute, nothing can be the greater.
I think it's the same in life. I mean, if you don't execute, you don't go forward, you don't progress, you don't grow. But in a lot of areas.
But the execution of things, you're more likely to execute on things that you're passionate about. And what we focus on, and we do this annually for sure when we do our annual business planning, but also we focus on it on a quarterly basis, where I don't tell even my management team, I don't tell my agents what their goals should be. They tell me what their goals are, and then I ask permission to hold them accountable to the commitments that they're making to their goals. And the management team will do our annual reviews, our quarterly reviews, and we're going to say, okay, what projects are we going to take on? Like as a management team. So I've got my ISA, he's got his project. My operations manager got his project. Transaction coordinator, client care, she's got her project. Marketing's got their project. So everybody's got their project that they're focused on. Okay, you're committed to it, so you're okay with me holding you accountable to it. Yes. Same thing with the agent. The agent says, well, נייתן, I want to make $150,000 this year. Okay. Are you committed to that? Yes. Then I ask them why. Like, how is that going to change their life? There's a deeper track to that. But when we get clarity to that, then we want to reverse engineer that to say, how do we make the big small? You want to make 150, fine. What does that mean? Well, based on your efficiencies and what we track, because we track everything, we know that means that you have to go on 2 appointments, face-to-face appointments with a buyer or seller a week. That's it. You go on 2 face-to-face appointments a week, you will make, based on your efficiencies, $150,000. Some weeks may go by and they didn't go on their 2 appointments. Well, what are they going to do? Well, a lot of times now, unfortunately, we work past this with the agents to say they want to make excuses. Well, נייתן, I didn't go on my 2 appointments because I didn't have any leads. Well, as we know on this, especially on this call that we're on, it's never a lead problem. It's always a conversion problem. It's never, ever, ever a lead problem. It is a conversion problem. And we look at it, we say, okay, you are committing to 2 appointments a week, but what do you need to do? What activities do you have to do on a consistent basis in order to book that appointment? What will we track and say, okay, we have to close 43 tasks, calls, emails, phone, text, whatever, in order to book 1 appointment. So I look back and say, how many tasks did you close this week? 0? Okay, I wonder why you didn't book them once. Now, you got tasks. Well, you close a task, but we also track that for every 12 conversations we have also equates to 1 appointment. So the team
have a chance to go sideways if I'm in your team.
It's just lack of commitment. And that's 100% what it is. And that lack of a commitment is something that I don't want to make them feel bad about it, but we're going to have a real conversation. Look, because my job as the leader of the team is I see myself more as a coach than a manager. And to be a successful coach, you have to discover the weaknesses of the people that have the ability to be able to lead, right? Discover the weaknesses, train them on those weaknesses, but most importantly, hold them accountable. And the accountability part for a lot of leaders or people that want to become leaders is the most difficult part. But the accountability becomes easier when you know you have the commitment of the person on the other side.
Yes.
But their commitment is only as strong as your commitment to them. So when I'm having coaching calls with my agents, we're saying, okay, look, tell me about your week. How many appointments did you go on? How many closed tasks did you go on? Did you fall short? Did you exceed your expectations? Let me know where that was. If you did fall short, what was it in particular that got in your way that we can now fix in the following week to ensure that you do hit the goals that you set for yourself? Based on that, okay, so what can we do to make sure that we protect our time better so that it doesn't happen? And then what can we now do to move things forward? Because
even just the fact that you're picking up the phone and you sometimes, I can imagine, you don't really need to ask those questions because they already know you. Just the fact that you called them, the inner mechanism inside their heads, it's already I think it's an inside conversation that everybody on your team knows to do, even without you asking. But the fact that you still call and you still care, this is the accountability and the care that you bring to them, which makes them want to prove to themselves and to you, I assume, that they can grow. That's amazing.
They also know that's one of because we have set calls and times every single week, and they know the questions that I'll be asking. So it's interesting. A lot of times now, what they do is they answer all the questions and email me the answers before we ever get on the call. So
yes.
It makes it a very efficient call. What's also funny, which is not a surprise to anybody, is the ones that say, oh, last minute appointment popped up. Oh. No, it didn't. They just didn't do what they said they're going to do, and they didn't want to hear that they didn't do what they said they're going to do.
Right.
So I don't let that happen because we focus on these calls, that we are committed to making these calls. This call is not a whining session. This call is set up as a productive phone call. So we're not here to whine. We're here for solutions, not problems.
That's amazing. I want to ask you a question, because sometimes when our agents and brokers, they hear stories just like yours, where you grew up with a very strong and meaningful father. You learned the business from home. You lead an amazing team for many, many years. Sometimes it looks too easy. Sometimes those who don't succeed as you are begin to tell stories that, ניית'en grew up inside of an office, not inside in a regular family. He's succeeding because blah, 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 blah. So what I'm interested is actually to hear about what were the prices that you paid to be so successful for so many years, what people don't see.
Well, I mean, there's always a price. There is always a price. And, I used to get that more. I mean, I've been doing this 25 years now. So I don't get that. Oh, the only reason נייthen's this way is because of his dad. That was a long time ago that I got that. But I remember, it's funny, anybody that knew my dad, they're like, no, נייthen earned every second and every bit of what he got. And, because I said he was a high D personality, so he wasn't holding my hand. I mean, the deal I made with my dad is that anybody wants to talk to me about splits, I've got no patience to talk about splits because my dad had me on a 50-50 split on everything. And then I had to pay for 50% of all the expenses. So like I didn't get a free ride on this thing by any means. And so I had to earn it, which I am so grateful that I did. I wasn't thrilled with having to pay 50% of the expenses, obviously, but looking back, I'm glad that I did because I earned the opportunity to get the success that I had. My first year in real estate, I sold 37 houses my first year, and I've never done less than that. Obviously, my entire career, and it was because I recognized early that success is going to come from persistence and follow up and truly offering value to the clients that you serve. And it is a commitment. It is a determination that you can't falter on, because if you do, you lose your momentum and it all falls apart. But anybody can be successful in this business if they choose to earn the opportunity to be successful. Earning it is with consistency in doing what you do. And through my career, I've had successes and I've had failures, and I found that it's interesting how everybody talks about peaks and valleys in real estate, and that's something that I've always been extremely mindful of. Peaks and valleys. I know I like to keep it consistent, so I don't find myself in peaks and valleys. That's why I have the systems do so. But I like to take it to this. It's like ریمکس does a fantastic job of celebrating our successes. As a kid, I'd go to these awards banquets and I would see people walk across stage. And, I remember when I was young and say, 100%, like I got to get 100%. I'm not a success unless I get 100% club. And my first year, it's like, I got 100% club. I was, and then it was like, okay, next year I'm gonna do this, next year I'm gonna do that. Then it's gonna be, 250, which is platinum. Then I'll really be there when I hit chairman. I'll really be there when I hit diamond. It was a constant, push to continue to grow and grow and grow. And I'm a big believer in, setting goals and dreams and achieving those. And what I found though, it was interesting, is that when I would hit my goal, and I owned the house, I had bought the car, I had the children, I built the family, we bought this, whatever it is that we created that we wanted to have in our life based on the dreams that we set, I achieved those things. And when I thought, oh my God, if I could ever just get there, everything would be better. Then I'd get there and I'd ask myself, this is it? And that was a dangerous place to be. I'm not saying don't go achieve your goals. I'm not saying that. But what I found, and not to sound cliche, is that the real value of setting these goals for yourself is not in attaining that. It's what you had to become, or who you had to become to be able to get there. And that was something that I had to learn, unfortunately, the hard way. I'll take you back to 2007, 2008. But I've got pivotal moments in my life that have shifted me because of a pain, of a failure that has caused me to continue to grow. I could name at least 4 off the top of my head that were traumatic, that made me change. But, one of the bigger ones was during the housing crisis. It was 2007. I was having, at the time, the best year I'd ever had in my career. And, my goal, I think I was number 8 in the state of Maryland, which that was a big deal as an individual agent. Danielle and I had just gotten, I guess at the time we were just married at the time. And we had been married a year at that point. And I was, it's coming towards the end of the year, and we had bought a house and, did it right, put money down and, had everybody figured out. But I got a little ahead of myself with my ego at the time. And, in 2007, the market was starting to change a bit. And I figured that, I had been going in this market that was kind of like a lower mid-range price. And, I'm number 8 in the state of Maryland. So I'm too good for that kind of stuff now. So I need to really go with the luxury market. Well, the market was going down at this time, and I wasn't willing to accept it. My dad had taught me that, you can get ahead of any market as long as you are persistent with your mailers and all that kind of stuff. You can overcome any downturn in a market. So I was like, yeah, Dad, you're right. So I would take mailers and we would mail to 30,000 homes. That was what my dad and I would do. And I said, well, I don't want to do that anymore. I'm going to mail to now 10,000 homes, and they're all going to be over $1 million. And that's what I'm going to focus on. And I'm going to really just hit them. So I was hitting them like every 2 weeks with these mailers. And my dad's also rule was, ניית'ן, you'll never know when you sent enough mail until you start getting complaints.
Mm-hmm. That's a good tip.
So I start getting complaints. And the biggest complaint is like, oh, save your money, you're killing trees and all this kind of stuff. So my ego, I'm like, oh, no, okay. So what you mean is that I need to get bigger postcards and I need to put a emblem on there that I have recycled paper so that I was, not looking like I was. So I was doing that. But while I was doing that, I had completely forgot about my past clients. I completely forgot about my core business to focus on this luxury business because my ego said, oh, no, this is where I need to be. Well, during that period of time, the market was changing. And in that 1 year span of time, there was only 3 houses out of 10,000 that were listed and only 1 sold. I was spending about $8,500 a month in direct mail, thinking I was going to figure this thing out in a market that was going down. And it got myself in a position where my parents had come over to our house. They had been on us, Danielle and I, for quite some time. And I guess it was December. And my dad's, we'd go to ریمکس conferences every year. That's just what we do. And so my dad was on me. He says, ניית'ן, you got to book your tickets. You got to book your tickets to R4. You got to get your flights and your hotels and all this kind of stuff. And he always wanted to do it before the end of the year for tax purposes and all. I don't know. My dad had his thing. And I kept kind of dodging my dad about doing that. The reason why is because I wasn't making any money. We had bought the house in August and we had put 20% down, decorating the house, doing everything else. And, but that was going to be which I didn't know, the last closing that I was going to have until April of the next year.
Oh, wow.
And it was December. There was becoming a problem, but I wasn't sharing the problem with anybody. And it's when my parents came over to the house for dinner, they invited themselves over. Said, okay, we're coming over and we're going to book our flights. Well, they didn't realize it. And I said, Dad, I don't know that I can go. He goes, why can't you go? You're number 8 in the state of Maryland. This is your best year. We want to see you walk across stage. This is going to be exciting. And I said, Dad, I can't go because I don't know that I can't afford it. And I don't know that I can afford our next mortgage payment, let alone go to Las Vegas for the R4 conference. At this point, it didn't go over well, not only with my parents, but also didn't go well with my wife, Danielle. And my dad looks at me in his strong D personality type. He says, ניית'ן, here's what you're going to do. Every dad, really, really goes over well. Great. You can follow the words from this. He says, you're going to quit selling real estate and get a full-time job. You're going to foreclose on your house that I just bought, and you're going to move in with Mom and I.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
So for somebody that has grown up in real estate his entire life, somebody that, everything that I've been through, I'm being told to foreclose, quit selling real estate. That's all I ever want to do. And move in with my mom and dad didn't go over well.
It's like a totally personality change that they were asking for you to do.
Well, I don't know if it, I just look at it as a test. And, that day I didn't take it very well. Either did my wife.
I can imagine.
My parents left. My wife and I obviously had a very important conversation. And I'm so grateful for that conversation because we were still newlyweds and we both said we're in this together. And one of the things that we did is we got rid of the credit cards that had the high interest rate. We pulled out credit cards that had low interest rates. And we said, look, we're going to commit to 3 months because that's all we have. And in 3 months, if we can't figure this thing out, we'll have no choice other than, to do that. And in the US, during the housing crisis, for people that don't understand, we saw 95% of homes that were hitting the market, if they were to sell, they were selling for under what it was owed on the property. 95%. We saw some markets drop by 70% from its initial value in order to sell. It was a bloodbath in the US.
I imagine.
And so we going through that was a very difficult time. I mean, I found myself in this new house, brand new office. I wasn't sleeping. I was very depressed and I didn't know what to do. And, once again, with the support of Danielle saying, we're going to figure this thing out, I got to go down to that basement with, walls full of coaching seminars and scripts and all these different things and saying, I've got all the information here. I just now have to execute on a consistent basis in a different way than I've been doing before. And that's where I leaned into past clients. That's where I leaned into saying, how can I be of value? How can I be a resource to people that are struggling right now? It was also when ریمکس had launched that CDPE, Certified Distressed Property Expert, which didn't apply in Israel, but in the US, it was critical. I was one of the founding members of that to say, okay, we can truly help people through this. And coming out of that put me in a position where I had to hire that first assistant that helped me with the systems, right? And then say, let's figure this thing out because I got another choice. So I was calling my past clients every day, no different than I was doing during COVID, is calling those past clients, showing them that, we offer the value that they can rely on us to help them through these tough times. And we were able to build it back to where I had my first closing in April. And then from April to the end of the year, we actually were short $30,000 from the year prior from our best year in real estate.
Oh,
but it sounds, it was a very difficult time. It was a time where,
I can't imagine.
You're not sleeping. So be careful of your egos. Be careful of hitting, and I made these dreams and goals in the most difficult time of my life and my career at the time, of what I wanted my business and life to look like. And now it's funny, I look back at those dreams that I was writing out in 2007 when I'm depressed in a basement, not having a closing. And I was able to achieve every single one of those goals that I made on that dream list.
That's very fulfilling.
Not able to do it. So I say, don't find a way to find pain in your life. Don't seek it out. But know that those lessons, those opportunities to be able to truly be challenged that way, you have the willingness and the commitment to take those shots, because you'll take them, and then find a way to push back. You'll recognize that it's through the fight of pushing back, you're going to truly find out who you are as a person. And then, which is the greatest gift you can possibly have. Now, you don't appreciate necessarily when you're going through it. Well, let's be honest. But after, I look back and say, that made me now who I am today. That was a catalyst to the next step that I had to take in my life. Now, since then, have I had other steps? Absolutely. Have I gotten knocked down? Absolutely. Have I been, laying in my office saying, what is happening? Everything's coming to an end. Absolutely. But you have to constantly say, okay, gut check. I'm not giving up on this stuff. I got pushed against the wall. I have a choice to either hide in that corner or push back, fight, figure out who I'm going to be for the next opportunity that I have in front of me. So you take those challenges. None of this is supposed to be easy. It's not. And if it is, you're lying to yourself and you're never growing.
There's a reason I'm listening to your story and I got goosebumps. There is a deep reason why our agents fell in love in you back then in COVID, and why we have this deep connection. Because while you were sharing this very difficult time in your personal life and in your business, I kept thinking about our last, let's say, 6 years since COVID hit. What our country went through is not normal in any way. COVID was worldwide, but our local wars, October 7th, the war with Iran, you can only imagine what happened to our nation, our people, our agents, our businesses. I think it's the first time I'm speaking about it, not in Hebrew. And it's something that when our agents, our top agents and everybody else, but usually when you say when your ego is high because you're super successful and you're used to have your phone calling all the time, plus our interest rates got high very much, and you can imagine how it affected the buyer's market. And you see your kids and friends, go into war. You understand that you have a bigger role in life. And I saw our offices became this hot places where agents brought food and supplies for soldiers, and they began calling their customers, they past clients, just as you said, saying, what do you need? I'm here to help. Do you have anyone for you? And they were bringing food to elder people who couldn't leave home. They were making sure that their customers have safe rooms. I don't know if you know, but in Israel, you have safe rooms in your houses because we have, as one of our top agents said, we have a weather of missiles from Iran coming. And we keep going, we succeed. And I don't know if it's funny or if it's just reality or if it's sad, but we have experienced so many wars. And once something like that happened, our adjustment time is close to 0 seconds. And then, as you said, when these lessons, I mean, these are crazy lessons that nobody needs to learn. But when these lessons happen, you discover who you are as a friend, you discover who you are as a business person, and you know that we can conquer all, we can overcome everything if you take that as a life lesson. So I see a lot of parallels between the mindset that you bring to your team. I can only imagine the amount of people who are so proud of who you are to them and what you do with your life and your business.
Well, well, thank you. But I mean, what you guys are dealing with is, I can't imagine. I can't
You
imagine.
shouldn't.
Nobody should. Nobody should. And you know, I've got great friends over there, ریمکس of Israel, that I've met at conferences over the years. And, you know, in October, I remember reaching out to Ariel in Jerusalem or Howard. And you know, that's where I get my updates. I follow you guys. I'm right there with you. I anything I can do, and you know this, I would do that for you guys. I admire the resilience that you have and just the faith that everything's going to be okay. I admire it. And it's, you know, when I was talking to Roy, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, he's saying, נייthen, I said, how do you do it? He's like, נייthen, when we're out looking at houses and all of a sudden sirens go off, then we go to a safe house, then we just go back out and start looking at houses again. I'm like, do you realize how you simplify what is actually happening? Like, that doesn't happen. So like,
they sign on exclusive listings in safe rooms. I mean, we were calling them. It's like, listen, I'm here with a client in a safe room. Just give me a minute for the siren to go off and I'll call you back. I'm like, okay, it's a new normal, but it is what it is.
It's amazing. Like, I was talking to Ariel, one of your team leaders, obviously in Jerusalem, and just making sure that him and his family are okay, what have you. And he sent me a message back that he just got drafted. And I'm like, what does that mean? I think that's how I responded. Like, what does that mean? He goes, well, I'm infantry, you draft me. And I went back to my team and I'm saying to myself, guys, can you imagine? It's like, and he was, I think he had a number of different deployments that he had to participate in, but he still is running his team, a very successful team at that. I admire it so much. And what I found is that it's interesting. Like, everybody's got their own challenge. Now, nobody's got challenges with what you guys are faced with right now. I'm not trying to belittle that or simplify it by any way at all. But it's like, it is interesting. Like, whether what you guys are dealing with in Israel, I spent a lot of time in Argentina as well, where they've got record inflation. And the only way you can buy a house, you can't finance anything. Everything's in cash and it's in US currency. It's like, it's just crazy. But yet people are able to get things done. People are still able to achieve their goals. People are still able to come out ahead, even with all the adversity that's against them. And it's interesting, because a lesson that I've learned and continue to learn is that regardless of what market you're in, people will always be buying and selling real estate for whatever reason it may be. Even if missiles are flying in the air, people are going to be buying and selling, which still shocks me. But anyhow, they'll still buy and sell. So,
that's true, though.
It's true. So no different than in 2007, 2008, when 95% of homes were upside down in order to sell. There was a market. And the thing is, you've got to find that. How do you offer unique value to the people that are looking to buy and sell in the most, craziest times? Mm-hmm. How can you be that person there? And you said it. I love that, your agent, doesn't surprise me at all, or open up their offices and being that resource for their clients, because, I remember when COVID first happened. Richard Robbins called me. We're good friends. He says, Nate, so what's your play? Like everybody's trying to figure out what's next, right? And we had developed, collectively together to say, okay, we got to focus on three things. And this is any traumatic experience or environment or whatever, focusing on three things. Number one, you got to focus on being part of the solution rather than the problem. While so many people are going to get caught up on what's online and social media and just the news and blah, 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 blah. Don't focus on the problem. Focus on the solution, number one. Number two is how can you come from a place of educating rather than selling? Nobody wants to be sold when they're dealing with all the other circumstances in their environment that aren't going well. They need to be educated. They deserve that from an advisor, to be educated rather than to be sold, right? Mm-hmm. But then number three, what can you do to protect your mindset? How do you protect and then strengthen your mindset? Because if you're not doing that, you can't offer value here.
I agree.
What are you doing to protect and strengthen your personal mindset?
ניית'ן, these three advices, I think the most important three advices in the business and in life. And I think it's the best way to sum up our conversation, in which frankly I could have continued for many, many hours. We just need to be at the same table with great coffee and friends. But really, thank you so much for your time, your energy, your heart. We got a little taste of your head and your success, and really deep dive into the mindset of what it takes to be so successful for so many years by yourself, as an agent, as a team leader, as a broker owner. You've tasted it all. And I wish you that you will continue impacting people, because you impacted my life. And I can't wait to see you again in person.
Too. And my prayers or thoughts are with you guys right now. And I look forward to being there with you, hopefully sooner rather than later at some point.
Yes, we'll make it happen.
But I am also 100% with you guys, and we're certainly thinking about you.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure. My pleasure.
מוכר או קונה נכס רימקס, עם הצלחה לא מתווכחים רימקס.